are going to review the movie Zombieland 2009. Uh, let's do its full movie review and facts. And if we talk about its overview, Zombieland 2009 is a zombie comedy that blends horror, road trip adventure, and dark humor into a fast-paced, self-aware survival story. Instead of focusing on disappear of or apocalypse politics, the film treats the zombie outbreak as a twisted playground where rules, instincts, and personality matter more than heroism. At its core, the film is not about zombies, it's about loneliness, connection, and survival habits in a broken world. If we talk about story and settings, the world has collapsed due to a sudden zombie outbreak, leaving cities abandoned and civilization reduced to scattered survivors. The film follows our four strangers who come together not because they trust each other, but because surviving alone is worse. The others, the journey takes them across empty highways, destroyed city, and forgotten amusement parks, locations that once symbolized the now turn into survival arenas. If we talk about character and their roles, then first thing is Columbus. Columbus is cast as and rule of the is survival depends on structure. He creates a list of rules to stay alive. Stretching seatbelts cardio, which act as both practical tool and emotional armor. He represents the idea that our thinking can be survival, not weakness. If we talk about Thalassis is aggressive, loud, and emotional guarded. He approaches the apocalypse like a challenge rather than a tragedy. His obsession with junk food masks a deeper emotional loss. He represents anger as a survival mechanism. If we talk about Vishita is clever, safety, and emotionally controlled. She trusts no one easily and uses deception as defense. Her intelligence keeps the group alive, but her walls keeps her isolated. She represents self-reliance, safe battery. If we talk about Little Rock is younger and more hopeful. She still believes in fun, joy, and moments of escapes even in the destroyed world. She represents what remains worth protecting. If we talk about tone and style, The film balances horror and comedy without undermining either. Zombies are dangerous, violent, and unpredictable, yet the film allows humor to emerge naturally from character reaction and absurd situation. Comedy doesn't erase danger, it coexists with it. The pacing is sharp, rarely slowing down, keeping tension alive even during jokes. If we talk about zombies and action, zombies are fast, relentless, and brutal. The film avoids romanticizing them and treats every encounter as potentially lethal. Action scenes are stylized but grounded, violence is subtle, messy, and often unexpected. Survival is really elegant. If we talk about themes beneath the comedy, if we talk about rules, sausage instincts, the film explores whether survival comes from preparation. Origins Columbus survivals by rules. Talasse survives by impulse. The story suggests both are incomplete. Alone. If we talk about loneliness after collapse, more than death, the apocalypse creates isolation. Characters seek compensation, even interest is risky survival. That connection feels hollow. If we talk about fun as existence, moments of joy, amusement parks, games, laughter become acts of rebellion against despair. The film argues that living is more than breathing. If we talk about visual and technical facts, and uses slow motion selectively to stylize sounds, bright color palette contrast with distortion, minimal explosion keeps focus on action. Music emphasizes irony and energy rather than dread. If we talk about interesting facts, the rules were designed to be practical survival advice. The film intentionally avoids explaining the origin of the outbreak. Zombies were designed to look freshly infected, not decayed. The Amazon Park finally symbolizes reclaiming joy. Uh, if you talk about strengths, strong character, Strong character chemistry, unique tone, blending horror and humor, memorable dialogue and moments, fast engaging pacing, emotional depth beneath comedy. If we talk about weakness, minor, limited world building beyond the way. Some side characters are intentionally disposable, not meant for serious horror audiences. If we talk about final verdict, Zombieland 2009 succeeds because it understands that apocalypse stories are not just about death, they are about how people choose to live when rules disappear. It is funny without being shallow, violent without being and emotional without being heavy. A rare zombie film that is both entertaining and surprisingly human. Let's talk about more about it. We talk about the apocalypse as a social reset. In Zombieland, the collapse of civilization functions less as tragedy and more as a reset button. Social hierarchies disappear instantly. Jobs, money, and status lose all value. What remains are habits, instincts, and emotional scars. The film quickly suggests that many people were already unprepared for life before the apocalypse. The zombies merely remove the illusion of order. If we talk about Columbus and the psychology of fear, Columbus doesn't become brave, he becomes functional. His rules are not just survivalists, they are coping mechanisms. Fear never leaves him, but he learns how to operate within it. This makes him one of the most realistic protagonists in the genre. The film treats anxiety as an adaptive trait rather than a flaw. If we talk about Tala's violence as grief, Tala's aggression is performative. He uses excess weapon destruction noise to drown out silence. His human mask The film reveals that his obsession is not food, that memory, every destructive act is refusal to slow down and feel. If we talk about Vichita's intelligence as armor, Vichita survives through deception. She tests people before trusting them. Her intelligence is sharp, but it is rooted in fear of dependence. The film never criticizes her caution, instead it shows how battle teaches survives faster than hope. If we talk about Little Rock and the cost of innocence, Little Rock represents innocence that has not yet calcified into survival instincts. She still seeks amusement, friendship, and fun. The film places her in danger not to punish innocence but to show how fragile life is in a broken world. If we talk about humor without safety, the comedy in Zombieland never removes danger. Jokes land quickly and vanish just as fast. Laughter exists between attacks, not instead of them. This balance allows tension to stay alive while keeping the tone playful. If we talk about violence and chaos, not heroism, action scenes avoids hero worship. Survival is messy, victory feels accidental, guns jam, mistakes nearly kill people. The film shows that staying alive is often about timing, not skill. The road movie structure. The journey format allows character to evolve gradually. Each location tests a different weakness. Highway test loneliness, stories, store test temptation, mansion best trust, amusement parks balance tree. If we talk about movement becomes emotional progress, the symbolism of the amusement park represent reclaimed joy, lights, rides, and laughter become dangerous yet irresistible. The finale argues that life without risk is survival, not living. Tone control, technical fact. Music choice emphasize irony, fast editing gives momentum, on screen text and personality. Action choreography favors sounds over precision, and If we talk about why the film worked long term, Zombieland endures because it does not mock horror, it humanizes it. The film allows fun without learning fear. It understands that after the world ends, people still want connection, humor, comfort, and meaning. If we talk about final reflection, it's a film doesn't argue that the apocalypse improves people, it simply removes distraction, revealing who they already were. Let's talk about more. If we talk about the film's take on survival personality type, Zombieland quietly categorized survivors by how they respond to loss, not by strength. We talk about Columbus survives by control, Tallahassee survives by access, Wichita survives by manipulation, Little Rock survives by relief. The film shows that survival is not one skill, it's a mindset shaped by trauma. Fear treated as information. Fear in the film is not something to overcome, it's something to listen to. Columbus' anxiety alerts him to danger and Wichita's suspicion prevents betrayal. Even Thalassa' aggression comes from refusing vulnerability. The film reframes fear as data, not weakness. The absence of world building is intentional. The movie never explains how device started, how far society fell, who is in charge. This absence keeps the focus personal. The apocalypse is not a global event, it's an individual experience repeated millions of times. The story stays smart to feel real. Zombies as environment hazard. Zombies are treated less like monsters and more like weather. They appeal they appear suddenly, they overwhelm without reason. They never negotiate. This removes more conflict from killing them and shift tension to achievement and awareness. Trust, if we talk about trust as the central risk, weapons can be managed, zombies can be avoided, people are unpredictable. The film consistently frames human interaction as the most dangerous gamble. Trust is sold as something that must be earned through time, not gesture. If we talk about comedy as a psychological defense, humor in the film is not for entertainment, it's armor. Jokes interrupt fear, sarcasm creates distance, absurdity prevents despair. The character laugh because stopping would force them to feel everything at once. If we talk about the road as emotional transition, every mile traveled increase emotional exposure, movements, fast conversation, stillness, force memory. The road becomes a pool for avoid grief while accidentally healing it. If we talk about Thalassa's quiet transformation, by the end Thalassa becomes less loud, not more than gentle, but more gentle. His protection of the group replaces destruction. As he toilets, the film shows healing not as substance but as redirection. If we talk about Columbus, growth without heroism, Columbus never becomes fearless, he becomes decisive. The film suggests that courage is not the absence of fear, but action taken despite it. The final act's emotional shift, the amusement park finale shifts the tone slightly darker. Fun becomes dangerous, lights attract death, joy demands risk. The film asks whether living fully is worth the cost and answers quietly yes. If we talk about subtle technical facts, Zombies were instructed to move erratically, not uniformly. Minimal CGI was used for close combat. Camera movement increases during panic scene. Bright lighting contrasts traditional zombie darkness. And why the film still holds? Because it understands one truth. After everything ends, people still crave connection, laughter, and purpose. The apocalypse doesn't erase humanity. It exposes it. If we talk about deepest takeaway, Zombieland is not about surviving zombies. It's about learning how to live when safety is gone and choosing joy anyway. Let's talk about more. Let's talk about more. If we talk about more, then the apocalypse as the emotional exposure. With civilization erased, we character can no longer hide behind social rules. There are no jobs, expectations, or identities to perform. What remains is emotional truth. The film shows how the apocalypse strips people down to their core traits. Anxiety becomes strategy, anger becomes energy, intelligence becomes protection, hope becomes vulnerability. This exposure is not romanticized, it is uncomfortably honest and often dangerous. And if we talk about loneliness as the true threat, then zombie kills body, but loneliness kills motivation. Columbus survives alone but barely lives. His routines keep him alive but emotionally straightened. Thalasses moves constantly to avoid silence. Vichit and Little Rock stay together because isolation is riskier than deception. The film suggests that companion is not a luxury, it's a survival need. Humor as a survival reflects laughter in Zombieland rise suddenly and disappear quickly. It breaks tension without erasing it. Humor acts as a pressure valve, preventing fear from becoming paralyzes. The film understands that people laugh in indigestion not because things are funny, but because they are unbearable. If we talk about movement as avoidance and healing, the constant travel prevents reflection. The road allow characters to postpone grief while slowly building trust. They heal accidental by sharing space and length. Healing is not intentional, it happens between stops. If we talk about the fragile nature of trust, even trust is never complete. Even at their closet characters keep mental exist open. The film shows trust as a gradual reduction of fear, not blind faith. Betrayal trust hurts because it confirms existing fear. Zombie as background pressure. Zombies rarely drive the plot emotion. They function as constant pressure, forcing decisions faster than comfort allows. They are less enemies than constraints, shaping behavior without intentions. And if we talk about the loss of safety rituals, simple acts, eating, sleeping, resting are never safe. The film highlights how losing safety rituals reshapes behavior. Comfort becomes dangerous, familiarity becomes risky. Survival requires amending habits that once meant security. Thalass's quiet vulnerability. As the group forms, Thalass becomes less performative. His violence slow, his humor softens, protection replaces destruction. The film shows grief not healing but rewriting itself. If we talk about Columbus' acceptance of this, Columbus never abandoned his rules, he adapts them. By the end, he accepts that some risks are worth breaking patterns for. The film suggests growth is not becoming fearless but allowing uncertainty. If we talk about Wichita's gradual softening, Wichita does not stop being cautious. She learns when caution becomes isolation. Trust becomes selective rather than absolute. Vulnerability becomes possible but controlled. The ending's emotional balance. The film ends without claiming victory. Zombies remains, dangers remains, but connection exists now. The ending argues that survival that people is richer than safety alone. If we talk about the film's quiet message, Zombieland suggests that after the world ends, what matters is not strength, weapons, or rules. What matters is who you choose to face the danger with. If we talk about finally, the film is remembered not for zombies but for chemistry, not for fear but for tone, not for apocalypse but for humanity. You have to wait for a little time. If we talk about the film's understanding of human adoption, one of the Zombieland's quick systems is how naturally people adapt to horror. There is no long mourning period shown for society itself. Skyscrapers fall into the background, abandoned cars become scenery, and danger becomes routine. The film suggests that humans do not wait to heal, they adjust first, then feel later. If we talk about if we talk about survival rules as emotional control, Columbus rules are not about zombies alone, they are a way to reduce chaos. In a world without guarantee, each rule simplifies decision making protecting him from panic as the story progresses. The rules remain, but they soften. This shows emotional growth without abandoning identity. If we talk about Talas's relationship with destruction, Talas destroys not because he enjoys violence, but because destruction keeps grief at bay, loud action prevents sweet memory. The film used humor to mask this truth, but it never denies it. His emotional depth arrives subtly, without speeches or confession. If we talk about Vishita's strategic distance, Visita maintains emotional distance as survival tactics. She believes she believes attachment creates weakness. The film challenges this belief slowly through shared rather, rather than dialogue. Her arc is about learning that isolation is not the same as independence. Little Rock as moral anchor. If we talk about then Little Rock does not drive the plot. She grounds it. Her presence forces others to consider consequences beyond survival. Fun becomes responsibility. Protections becomes purpose. The film shows that innocence changes behavior even in the apocalypse. If we talk about the film control chaos, action scenes are intentionally chaotic but never confusing. The camera stays close enough to feel danger without losing orientation. This balance keeps tension high while preserving clarity, a rare achievement in horror comedy. If we talk about the use of abandoned spaces, every empty location reflects something lost. Supermarket show broken comfort, mansion show hollow luxury, highway shows abundant progress. The film uses space to remind viewers it no longer exists without lingering on sadness. If we talk about balance without cruelty, despite its body count, the film avoids cruelty. Zombies are threats, not victims. Violence is functional, not indulgent. This keeps the tone playful rather than grave. If we talk about pacing as personality, the film moves fast because its character refuses stillness. Stillness invites memory, motion prevents reflection. The pacing mirrors emotional avoidance until connection slow everything down slowly. If we talk about the ending emotional logic, the finale does not promise safety, it promises companionship. This I define the film's emotional philosophy. Danger shared is preferable to stay alone. And if we talk about why Zombieland still resonates, because it understands that after catastrophe, people don't ask, how do we rebuild the world? They ask, who is still here with me? If we talk about deepest takeaway, Zombieland is ultimately about choosing people over patterns, even when patterns feel safer. And that's why what makes survival feels like living. Let's talk about more. If we talk about the film's quiet respect for incredible imperfection, none of the character becomes ideal survivors. Columbus remains angry. Dolores remains reckless. Ishita remains guarded. Little Dog remains impulsive. The film never fixes them. Instead, it shows how imperfect people can still function together. Survival does not require transformation, it requires compatibility. If we talk about Chaos as a new normal, the film never treats Chaos as temporary. And if we talk, there is no belief that things will return to how they were. The characters do not speak of rebuilding society or restoring order. Chaos is accepted as the environment, not a problem to solve. This acceptance keeps the tone light without being negative. If we talk about the emotional meaning of shared space, Living together matters more than fighting together. Sharing a car, sharing food, sharing silence. These mundane acts reflects what society once provides. The film suggests that communities begin with proximity before trust. If we talk about why the film avoids tragedy scenes, major losses are hinted at, not shown. The film avoids dwelling on past trauma because it understands something important. Survivors, if we talk about why the film avoids tragedy scenes, major losses are hinted. It's not strong. The film avoids dwelling on past trauma because it understands something important. Survivors already live with loss constantly replaying. It would be reduced, and instead grief exists in behavior, not flashback. If we talk about humor as timing, not jokes, the comedy works because of when it happens, not when it's said. Jokes learn during moments of relief, not danger. Humor follows tension rather than interrupting it. This timing preserves fear while allowing relief. It's a structural choice, not just strike. We talk about zombies and the measure of adaptation. Early encounter feel desperate, later encounter feel practice. The zombies don't change, the people do. This shift quietly tracks adaptation without dialogue. And if we talk about the emotional risk of hope is treated as dangerous, lights attract zombies, fun attracts attention, connection creates vulnerability. Yet the film still chooses carefully, knowingly, and with consequences. The ending emotional, honest. The ending doesn't claim happiness; it claims togetherness. The group is not safe. They are not victorious. They are simply not alone anymore. And that is enough. Why the film feels rewatchable? Because it is not about surprise. It is about rhythm, chemistry, and tone. Each rewatch feels like revisiting familiar people rather than redeveloping plot. If we talk about the film's deepest truth, Zombieland quietly argues that in a world stripped of meaning, people don't invent new philosophies, they cling to each other. If we talk about absolute finally, the zombies are not what the film remembers. The rules are not what the film remembers. The rules are not what the film remembers. The jokes are not what the film remembers what remains is for them as people choosing to move forward together, knowing it may not last and choosing it anyway. Let's talk about more. It's taking time in loading, guys. If we talk about fear is personalized, not universal. Each character fears something different. Columbus fears mistake. Thales fear emptiness. Wichita fears betrayal. Little Rock fear fears crying up too fast. Zombies are just the background threat. The real tension comes from the inner fears clashing while they travel together. And why Columbus narrates the story? Columbus is not the strongest or bravest, he is the observer. His rules exist because he analyzes instead of dominates. This makes him the perfect narrative for a broken world where reflection matters more than heroism. If we talk about the film simply tell us survival favors awareness, not aggression. If we talk about Thalas's violence and murder, Thalas's aggression is emotional, not tactical. He fights zombies with excess force because violence is the only language left to his loss. His obsession with Snake is not comedy alone. It represents a desire for small joys that still feels real. Food becomes a memory. And if we talk about Wichita's intelligence versus versus emotional distance. Ishita is the smartest strategist, but the least emotional available. She survives by control, plan rights, manipulation. Yet this survival method isolates her. The film slowly shows that intelligence alone can't replace trust. Her arc is about choosing vulnerability over advantage. If we talk about little rock and the cost of innocence, little doesn't want safety. She wanted normalcy. He desired for amusement parks and friends reflects a child's refusals to let the apocalypse define identity. This creates risk but also preserve immunity. The film never punishment her for this, which is important. Why the apocalypse feels lived there is no origin story, no scientists, no news reports, no explanation. The world simply is. This creative choice shifts focus away from cause and uh, toward consequences, making the settling feel authentic rather than fictional. Silence, if we talk about silence as storytelling, some of the film's strongest moments have no dialogue. Long drives, empty roads, abandoned buildings. Silence communicates loneliness more effectively than exposition ever could. If we talk about the film's subtle rejection of power fantasies, unlike many apocalypse films, Zombieland doesn't reward dominance. Strong characters do not rule. Weapons do not solve anything. Isolation is not strength. Connection is portrayed as risk yet necessary. If we talk about why the film never becomes the film understand that disappear without contrast becomes stronger. Humor is not used to escape fear. It is used to process it. This keeps the audience emotionally engaged without emotional fatigue. If we talk about the apocalypse as e- emotional reset, without society, status disappear, wealth disappear, reputation disappear. What remains is behavior. The film suggests that catastrophe reveals character more clearly than civilization ever did. If we talk about the final unspoken agreement, by the end, no one promised anything. No, we'll be together forever. No future plan, no illusion. If we talk about, they simply continued together. That restraint is what gives the ending weight. By Zombieland venues, because it doesn't it is with technology trends on spectacles. It ages with human behavior which never changes. Fear, attachment, loss, hope. If we talk about the deepest possible reading, Zombieland is not about zombies. It's about learning that rules keeps you alive, but people gives you reason to stay alive. This is now everything we need to surface. Let's talk about more. It's letting idea to make little weight. If we talk about the world feels empty because people avoid each other. Most apocalypse films show So empty because everyone is dead. Zombieland shows emptiness because survivors chosen isolation. Abandoned highway, empty supermarkets, silent neighborhoods. These are not just visual signs. They reflect how fear has trained people to avoid connection. The world is not empty by accident, it's empty by design. Survival has turned into a self imposed loneliness. Why cars matter so much in the film? Cars are not just transportation, they are temporary bonds. Each car represents a moving comfort, zone, protection, control, escape. If we talk about characters, talk more honestly, uh, inside cars than anywhere else, the road becomes a neutral space where no one owns territory, allowing trust to grow slowly. This constant motion mirrors emotional instability. No one is settled physically or mentally. If we talk about zombies as predictable threats, zombies in this film are simple, repetitive, almost boring. This is intentional. They behave the same way every time, making them less exciting than human. This contrast quietly tells us that unpredictable peoples are more dangerous than monsters. The real suspense never comes from zombies, it comes from decision. It comes from decisions. If we talk about comedy as emotional armor, jokes are never random. When every joke appears right after fear, loss, tension, vulnerability. Comedy works as emotional armor, allowing character to stay functional without breaking down. Laughter replaces screaming, sarcasm replaces grief. The film understands humor not as but as survival instincts. Why trust develop so slowly? The group doesn't bond quickly. There are no instant friendship, no emotional references. Trust growth through shared danger, repeated choice, small acceptance. This realism gives weight to every later moment of cooperation. When characters finally rely on each other, it feels earned, not scripted. If we talk about Thalas's fear of stillness, Thalas is most uncomfortable when nothing is happening. Silence forces memory, movement keeps pain away. This is why he prefers choice, action, noise, distraction. Stillness would require him to confront loss directly, something the film carefully avoids spelling out, allowing behavior to speak louder than dialogue. Columbus rules as anxiety management. The rules are not about zombies, they are about control. In a world with no structure, rules replace certainty. They reduce choice into manageable steps. Columbus survives because he adapts, not because he is brave. The film subtle validates anxiety as a useful survival traits when paired with action. If we talk about Vichitra lies and protection, not balance, Vichitra lies because truth has consequences. Her deceptions are never cruel, they are calculated defenses. She believes emotional distance prevents loss. The film treats her mischief as learned behavior, not a flaw. Her growth is quite fewer lies, longer pause, more eye contact. If we talk about Little Rock as a moral compass, Little Rock reminds the group what they are protecting. It's not survival life. If we talk about music, fun, games, normalcy, without her, the group would survive but lose meaning. The film positions childhood not as weakness but as resistance against disappear. If we talk about why the film avoid explaining the apocalypse, explanation would shift focus away from people by refusing to explain. There is no hope of fixing the world, no illusion of return, no false comfort. This locks the story in the present moment, forcing characters and viewers to deal with what exists, not what was lost. The final act is about choice, not action. The climax is not about defeating zombies. It's about choosing people over safety. Each character voluntarily breaks their own survival logic to protect someone else. This is the film's true resolution, not victory, but transformation. If we talk about the ending, emotional honesty, no grand speech, no promise, no rebellion, no rebuilding plans, just continuous. This restraint respects the reality of trauma. Healing doesn't end, it adapts. What the film ultimately says, you can survive alone, but survival without connection becomes hollow. The film argues that rules keeps you breathing, violence keep you safe, people keep you human. And let's talk about more. If we talk about the film is built like a survival manual emotionally. The movie mirrors Columbus's rule book in its structure. Early scenes are short, fast, not loading as we have to reload it, and if we reload it, it will take too much time. What's it? Okay. So where we were. Okay. Early scenes are short, fast, and isolated, and later scenes becomes longer, slower, and shared. The mirrors how the character move from reactive survival to intentional living. The pacing itself tells the story why violence is never glorified. Even during actions, heavy movements, violence is framed as messy, loud, in legend. There are no heroic poses or slow motion celebrations. Zombies kills are treated like chores, necessary, repetitive, exhausting. This keeps violence functional, not empowering. The use of space to shoot us. Early on, character keep physical distance, separate rooms, separate seats, separate exits. As trust grows, space collapse. Shared rooms, shared meals, shared. The film never say that they trust each other now. It shows it especially. Why the group never named themselves, they remain identified by personality, traits, cities, roles, not names. Names creates permanence. The absence of names keeps relationships professional. Realistic for a world where loss is constant, when emotional bonds from they do so without labels, making them more fragile and more meaningful. If we talk about the subtle role of nostalgia appears in controlled doses, old music, amusement parks, junk. These are not attempts to restore the past, they are reminders that joy once existed and can exist again in fragments. The film avoids nostalgia become dynamic. And if we talk about why the film refuses moral heresy, no character is presented as right. If we talk about sound design as emotional guide, zombies are loud, humans are quiet. This reversal places emotional focus on people. Silence become intimacy, noise become threats, movement without sound are often movement of trust. And if we talk why the ending is open, not hopeful. Hope would suggest resolution. The ending offers continuation, not closure. This is more honest. Survival is not a destination, it's a process. And if we talk about the film's core statement, civilization didn't make people human, people did. And when civilization disappears, humanity survives only through choice. Not instinct. The quiet trust beneath the comedy. The humor is not there to entertain, it's there to prevent emotional collapse. If we talk about final thought, Zombieland works because it understands that the scariest part of the apocalypse is not death. It's living without connection. That's film's final unspoken message. let's talk about more. It's loading as you have to make a little wait. If we talk about survival changes, what normal means, one of the quietest ideas in the film is that normality does not disappear. Instead, normal is no longer society, routines, everything. Normal becomes finding food, sleeping one more night, laughing once a day. The film shows how human is instinctively recalibrate expectations instead of collapsing under loss. The this adaptation is never announced. It happens silently through behavior. And if we talk about why fear never leaves the character, even during jokes, smile, and bonding, fear is always present. You see it in quick glances, hands staying near weapons, listening before speaking. Fear becomes a background condition, not a reaction. The film portrays fear as permanent but manageable, which is more realistic than sudden panic or total numbness. If we talk about the importance of routine, Columbus's rules create rhythm. Wake up, check surrounding, move, secure shelter, eat, repeat. Routine becomes the replacement for society's structure. Without it, mental collapse would be inevitable. The film simply suggests that routine is psychological armor. If we talk about why zombies are almost unanimous, zombies have no individuality, no backstories, no emotional moments, no lingering trauma. This removes moral conflict, killing them doesn't require justification, allowing the film to focus emotional energy on human choices, not monster ethics. If we talk about emotional scarcity, makes small moments powerful. Because joy is rare, it becomes intense. A song, a joke, a shared meal, a theme park. These moments feel outside because the emotional economy of the world has collapsed. The film understands that scarcity magnifies uh, if we talk about tolerances and refusal to agree publicly, tolerance never explains himself. It doesn't articulate pain because words reduce it. Instead, grief leaks outside it through obsession, anger, humor, excess. The film respects silence as a valid form of warning. Columbus's growth is eternal, not physical. He doesn't become stronger, faster, or deadly. He becomes more digestive, more confident, more willing to risk loss. This makes his arc subtle. Growth is emotional courage, not dominance. If we talk about Wichita's slow re-entry into trust, her arc is measured in seconds. How long she was before life, how long she maintained eye contact, how long she stays instead of leaving. Trust returns gradually, not dramatically. This realism gives her character weight. If we talk about Little Rock as a future without illusion, Little Rock doesn't represent innocence untouched, he represents adopted innocence. She understands danger, she understands loss, yet she still chooses joy. This balance prevents the film from becoming cynical. The film's respect for impermanence. Nothing is portrayed as lasting. Cars break, shelter fall, planes fail. This impermanence forces characters to live moment to moment, which creates emotional presence instead of also why the group formation matters. The group is not formed out of destiny, it is formed out of repeated choice. Each time they stay instead of leaving, they recommit. This makes the bond voluntary, not forced by plot. If we talk about the apocalypse as emotional clarifier, without social pressure, Pretending disappear, mask all behavior defines identity. The film suggests that crisis reveals truth faster than comfort ever could. If we talk about the deepest layer, at its core, Zombieland argues that human beings do not survive because they adapt to danger. They survive because they adapt to each other. If we talk about final line, beneath everything, in a world where death is constant, connection becomes rebellion. Let's talk about more. If we talk about living without tomorrow, one of the most unsettling truth in the film is that no one plans for the future. There is no when this ends after we repeat. Someday we are return. The character lives entirely inside the present. This is not hopelessness, it realism. The film quietly shows that imagining a future can be dangerous and survival is uncertain. Hope is kept small to avoid emotional collapse. If we talk about why attachment is treated as a risk, every emotional connection is portrayed as dangerous but unavoidable. The closer people get, the more they hesitate. The more they expose themselves, the more they can be hurt. The film doesn't romanticize bonding, it treats attachment as a calculated risk, one that must be chosen repeatedly despite the cost. If we talk about the psychology of constant readiness, nobody ever fully relaxes, even in moments of safety. Doors are checked, exercise are noticed, weapons are nearby. This constant readiness becomes a way of life. The film captures how trauma rewrites behavior permanently. Vigilance becomes instinct, not effort. If we talk about why humor never breaks the tone, the comedy never undercuts danger. Joker occurs alongside fear, not instead of this balance. Keeps the world believable. Humor doesn't make the apocalypse less serious, it makes it survivable. The film understands that people joke because things are bad, not because they are fine. If we talk about control says Charles, each character represents a different response to Charles. Columbus creates structure, Talashe embraces destruction, Visita manipulates. Cheetah control doesn't prevail, which is manipulates outcome. Dialogues seek experience. None are portrayed as wrong. The film presents coping mechanism, not moral judgment. So it was the review of this movie Zombieland, and I hope you like it. If you like it, then enjoy. And we all meet tomorrow again. So goodbye for now.